different sides. Meanwhile, Houthis shell damage area with heavy weapons amid fears of a humanitarian massacre, while damaged people call the president to interfere in the matter. Dr. Abdelaziz, now Abdurabbu Hadi Mansour, the Yemeni president, since he assumed powers,
Abdurabbu Mansour Hadi, since he assumed powers, the transitional period of Yemen was supposedly to end of this year. 2014.
2014, new elections. But the developments in Yemen, with the Houthis, the support of Iran, and in the south, so many problems in Yemen. How can we sum up the problems of Yemen?
There is one theme that connects Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, which is Iran.
So Iran is dominating the three countries so far.
As you pointed out, the transitional government in Yemen, led by President Abdurabbu Mansour Hadi, is charged with implementing the GCC initiative to restore stability to Yemen, and it has a very clear timeline that will culminate, hopefully, in the election of a new government, a new parliament in 2014. In the meantime, the main event has been the national dialogue. The national dialogue has been going very well, with only one exception. Those groups that receive support from Iran have not been very forthcoming in helping the national dialogue along. And I think the flare-up in the fighting in Saada, in the Houthi-dominated area, is one way to prevent the national dialogue from reaching its natural conclusion, which is to agree to a roadmap for restoring peace and security. Iran doesn't want that, obviously, and its allies, the Houthis, don't want that. And we saw the siege of Damaj, where I think the Houthis showed their true colors. They besieged this town, bombarded it with heavy weapons, and they have broken every truce that has been negotiated by government negotiators, mediators. And I think they probably will continue. And just like we saw in Syria, where the failure of both regional and international powers to help the legitimate forces, the legitimate representatives of the people in Syria as the national coalition, the Free Syrian Army, we failed them. The whole world failed them. And so now we see the radicals, the terrorist groups are gaining at their expense. At the same time, the government forces supported by Hezbollah and Iran are also gaining the upper hand. We see this could happen in Yemen also if we again fail to provide the Yemeni government with the support it needs to restore peace and security. Both, I think, they need economic aid and they also need security aid, security assistance, to prevent the Houthis from extending their sphere of influence beyond where they are now.
Okay. Dr. Al-Manna said now, if we're to discuss the Yemeni case alone, how do you read the developments, and are we able to solve the conflicts within the GCC countries as the Gulf Peace Initiative says?
I think yes, we hope that the GCC countries will succeed to solve the problem. It is the GCC initiative which brought the Yemenis to the table of negotiations and the departure of President Ali Abdullah Saleh. But I think there are still players who wanted actually to repeat what had happened before during the rule of Ali Abdullah Saleh. Abdullah Saleh himself, I think he's not far away from what is going on at this moment in Yemen. Definitely the Houthi, they are now feeling that they are power. They had been hit very badly by the government of Yemen and war of attrition for a long time, but they still having their own power. they have artillery, they have rockets. Well, the question is from where they got these arms, from which side. I think it is clear Iran is the provider of these weapons. The other party is the parties in the south, the southern movement. They really feel that they've been depressed by the north. They want to recreate the Republic of South Yemen, but still they cannot declare that very clearly. They are waging also this kind of protest and probably violence.
Okay.
The Qaeda is the major player. Al-Qaeda, especially in the south of Yemen, in Abiyan, especially in other part of the Republic of South Yemen before, they are creating their own zones and they are fighting the government. And Hussein, I want you to remember that so many officers and air pilots and also thinkers had been assassinated. And that reminded us for what happened in Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein regime, when so many scholars, especially those who are on the scientist side, being hunted and assassinated. I think what is going on in Yemen, it is similar, but on the military side more than in the civilian side.
Okay.
I think we have a responsibility in the GCC to help President Mansour Hadi and his government to overcome this problem. We need to move very quickly because Yemen is not far away. It is our next door.
Yes, exactly. Professor Schleifer, sir, if we are to review the Yemeni situation and the development in the, let's say, the involvement of Al-Qaeda, the Americans using the drones, how do you see the situation in Yemen? And are you optimistic about a solution soon in Yemen?
Well, I would imagine that one would be as pessimistic about the situation as Yemen as the situation in Syria and Iraq. Yemen is complicated because, again, you have like two separate struggles going on. On one hand, you do have regional groups which feel they have been isolated. The Houthis just do not come from nowhere. They don't sort of spring out of the air. You had a uniquely Yemeni Shia, it's a different Shia sect, but a uniquely Shia sect that has been always prevalent in the north and once was the ruling authority before there was a civil war, which finally led to the overthrow of the Imamate and the creation of a republic. And so it isn't that they themselves have just sort of parachuted in there. They reflect a concern for an area which felt it has not been dealt with. And the same applies with the South. I mean, once, a decade or so ago, you had the Republic of South Yemen, and there was a war, and they lost, and they became part of Yemen. So I think that then you have a completely different struggle, which we could say is ideological, and that is the presence of Al-Qaeda, on one hand, representing extremist, extremist Sunni group that will kill any moderate Sunnis who stand in their way, these assassinations we've been talking about. And at the same time, you have Salafist forces who have moved into the north and fight on their own, fighting with the Houthis and others. So I think what the central government has to do is, first of all, look towards a more federal form in which they can resolve legitimate grievances on the part of both the northern and southern communities with more autonomy, perhaps under a federal framework, and by doing that, isolate the two ideological forces which really do not represent, in either case, do not represent the Yemenis. And they have to do that. They can't just say, oh, well, we want everyone to sit around and participate.
Okay.
The fact that the Houthis are taking weapons from Iran does not necessarily, as I said, mean that they were parachuted in there by the Iranians. They were they don't even belong to the same sect as the Shiite sect as the Iranians. So the Iranians took advantage of a situation where you had this natural antagonism, and where were the Houthis going to get their armaments from?
Okay.
So I think we have to be a little more detached and look at autonomy and a federal system as possibly a way of isolating the extremist ideological groups,
in Yemen.
both Al-Qaeda and
and the
Salafi that
Houthis.
are in play.
That's a clear idea. The viewers, a short pause, and we'll go to Libya. Welcome back to Political Agenda. We do apologize for the technical default. Let's go to Libya. Libya saw the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi as a result of the Arab Spring. Meanwhile, street fighting continues in Tripoli between local citizens protesting and some armed gangs from Misrata terrorizing the people in Tripoli. Civilian groups in Tripoli have organized to evact peacefully the armed Islamist bridges from Misrata that have operated in Tripoli Gragur district. Dr. Abdelaziz, Aluwaisheg, we sum it up in Libya, and we'll take one sentence about Tunisia because it's been the simplest. Libya, we thought just by ousting Muammar Gaddafi things will go better, but now every Misrata has its own country, Benghazi is almost different, Tripoli, and we see how is it by 42 years of rule of Muammar al-Gaddafi have eliminated all political elements, and that's why people cannot start democracy? Or what's the trouble in Libya?
It's certainly part of it. I think you're right. We see now a string of city-states, almost, and they're fighting with each other over dominance and how to run the country and how to divide its resources. Keep in mind that Libya is a very rich country, and the spoils or the stakes are very high. And so I think Libya, unfortunately, I think you're right about the responsibility of al-Gaddafi, and that he made sure that once he's removed, that Libya cannot be governed. He eliminated or destroyed all states, all institutions. And he deliberately did that, and he always argued that that's the right way. And he said he wasn't the president and there is no government and all of that. So he deliberately destroyed all state institutions, and the whole country was stitched together by his presence. And once he was removed, the collapse of the central government was very clear. However, I think the revolution bears some of the responsibility. I think there was a missed opportunity that immediately, I think, after al-Gaddafi was removed, and the government of Libya could have utilized that moment of euphoria inside Libya, and also the support of the international community to disarm the militias. They were very slow to do that. I remember many wise voices in Libya itself called for disarming the militias, enlisting them in the army, enlisting them in the security forces. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And we see the results today. We have every town, every tribe has their own militia, and they're vowing for power.
Okay. Dr. Adil Manna, Libya, how do you read it, sir?
Libya actually is a very complicated map, actually. After overthrow of Muammar al-Gaddafi, so many groups, so many militias, armed militias existed in the Libya land, and they all they have their own different agenda. Unfortunately, because they been helped by the West to destroy Muammar al-Gaddafi power and took over. They also obtained arms, weapons from different types. And I remind you, the French president,
Francois Hollande,
he was, yes, when he was fighting in Mali, said that we provided the Libyan revolutionary with the arms, and now we are fighting the terrorists provided by the Libyans by the arms weapons we've been provided. There are actually different militias with different aims. You know, Libya before 1952 wasn't united. There are regions. Now Burga declared it is autonomy.
It's independence.
And it is, yes, it is autonomy actually, still self-autonomy, but it is the first step to an independence. Also, there are others in the south who prepare themselves to follow suit.
Okay.
Some of the groups fighting for political power, others for financial power. You know that the government even cannot sell its oil. It has been capitalized by these groups. Okay. And
the idea is clear. Dr.
This situation is very serious and very dangerous.
I want
the weakness of the central government is the problem.
Okay. Professor Schleifer, in 1 minute, sir, how do you sum up the situation in Libya?
It's a tragedy because it was a popular movement. I mean, there was an extraordinary popular movement, and initially the first militias represented that in the struggle against Gaddafi. And in fact, now there are probably 3 times as many militia groups in existence now than existed at the time of the uprising, because it's simply the way the country is going. I think the only moral to draw from it is what I suggested before in Yemen, which is, again, given the fact that Libya had these different sectors, very self-conscious areas, Tripoli, Benghazi, the southern areas, autonomy generally only moves to independence when autonomy is denied. You know, even the American Revolution, when the American Revolution started, it really wasn't to break with England, it was to assert an autonomy and the right to be represented. It was taxation, and it was the indifference of England to yielding that autonomy that led finally to the complete severance of relations in the revolution. And whenever you look at things
Professor
like that, you
Schleifer,
see. So I think, again, that there are only 2 ways you can hold Libya together.
Okay.
One is a powerful dictatorship, and the other is autonomy in a federal system.
Okay, that's fine. Dr. Abdelaziz Aluwaisheg, how can we sum up the situation of the whole region after we've discussed Syria alone? Well, Lebanon is in the side. Tunisia, we didn't go because it's the easiest so far. In 1 sentence, how can we sum up the situation in the region and the outcome of what is so-called the Arab Spring?
Yes, I think what has happened is fatigue among both regional and international powers. There was euphoria at the beginning, and people, I think, wanted to help, wanted to give a hand, be part of this positive change. Unfortunately, I think as soon as things start turning south, as they say, or becoming worse, I think everybody left these countries to their own devices. I hope that the movement around Geneva II, for example, will energize the international movement, international community, to help Syria get out of its of the crisis it has. Iraq, I think, we have one country where I think can make a great difference, which is the United States. The United States is the only country that can influence events in Iraq because it is the main ally of Iraq, it is the main provider of weapons, and it's a strategic ally, and it has to exercise its power.
Are you optimistic in the future, in the foreseeable future?
I think in the long run, I'm optimistic. I think in the short run, there will be a lot of mistakes on the way.
The viewers, I want to thank my guests. From the studio was with me, Dr. Abdelaziz Aluwaisheg, Assistant Secretary General for the GCC countries. From Kuwait, Dr. Adil Manna, an academic and a media advisor. Last but not the least, from Cairo, Professor Abdulaziz Schleifer, Professor of Political Analyst and Professor at AUC. The viewers, the situation in the Middle East is becoming very tough. The conflict is stronger. As Dr. Aluwaisheg, now we are beyond tensions. Let's find a solution through the Arab League or through the United Nations. On behalf of Executive Director of the program, Abdullah Al-Mansour, Director Hiyam Al-Kilani, Abdul Jabbar Al-Kibiri, Sultan Al-Sayari, and the rest of the crew wish you a good night.
So you want to know what I find strange, Simon? Drug squad busts you on importing heroin. And instead of trying to patch the charge with them, you call us in on a 12-year-old homicide that's already been solved.
You think it's solved?
8 years old. What do you do?
That's Colleen Walsh. She's the one who discovered her family.
She had a good shrink.
Listen to me. I'm not about to bring her in on this nightmare because some low-life dealer says the cops didn't do their job the first time around.
I help you solve a murder. That's got to be worth something. You guys can talk to drugs for me, right?
Yeah, and if we find out you're smoking us, we'll talk to them all right.
And you'll be facing 10 years.
And you'll have 2 very unfriendly escorts.
I know what I know. Walsh was moving into hard drugs. That's why he was killed. And there's a guy. The Rev. Is he in there?
Who the hell is the Rev?
He used to work with Walsh. After Walsh's death, he took over his business. You find him, find the Rev. He'll tell you who really killed that family.
You better. Do you remember the Walsh family murders?
Yeah. You always remember the ones that killed their own kids.
Were there ever any theories that it could have been something other than a murder-suicide?
Nah. Bullet angles, entry and exit wounds, it all checked out. Plus, they had a history of willing on each other. You saw the hospital records.
Yeah, we saw them. Broken arms, broken collarbones. But him too.
Well, the wife stuck up for herself, as far as she could, anyhow. I heard the girl before I saw her. This awful whimpering sound. He found her curled up next to her brother, shaking.
So that's Colin's blood on her.
Uh-huh.
She was by herself when you got there?
Yeah.
Did she contaminate the scene?
Well, it's still clear what happened.
And what was that?
One gun shot this family. Ballistics was clear on that.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say, that I didn't close this case?
We got a tip. Suggests that Blair Walsh might have been moving into harder drugs, and that there might have been a motivation to kill him.
Walsh was a pot dealer. That was it. We asked around. He wasn't stepping on anybody's toes. He was well-liked. The whole family was.
Did you ever come across someone named the Rev?
Hey, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, this was a double homicide and a suicide. End of story. Walsh shot his family and killed himself and left all his problems behind for that little girl to clean up.
I got an A. I got an A on my performance review. You're stuck with me.
You don't give A's. They'll let you keep your job.
Yeah, well, that's an A where I come from. You hear me, Frank? I got an A.
Congratulations, eh? I got an idea for you.
What?
You help me with this audit, and I'll take you out for dinner.
Sorry, I'm already moonlighting with Hank in the evidence room. His department pays me time and a half. But if you want to cut me a deal...
Hey, Nico, take a look at this. You remember a case a couple of years ago? Family's out running with their new German Shepherd, and suddenly, with no warning, dog chases the wife down, goes straight for her throat. And the weird thing is, husband just stood there and watched.
Angry German Shepherd? I think I'd stand there, too.
Maybe you should go talk to him.
No bad dogs, Frank, just bad owners.
Yeah, well, this guy was that, all right.
I have to say, I didn't expect to hear from the police all these years later.
Well, there's been some news regarding your son's death.
News, Detective? My son killed himself and his family 12 years ago. How can there be news?
You said it surprised you, the shooting.